So when we think about what American Indian people are wearing in the 18th century, sometimes we have the thought to go to leather, fur, and feathers. But actually, with the introduction of European trade, a lot of what we're wearing are things like wool, silk ribbons, cotton, linen. So if you look at much of what I'm wearing, there's very little natural materials that you would see indigenous here to the Americas. One thing you saw me put on is going to be shoes, for example. While more often than not, a lot of American Indian folks are preferring to wear moccasins while abstaining from shoes. But here and there, you do see some American Indian people choosing to wear things like buckled shoes as well. Mm-hmm.
Our clothing has a very particular look, right? Something like our leggings. It has a very specific cultural significance. So we do not cover the thighs. It is considered feminine. And it also is to display things like tattoos, which traditionally would have been shown here to show records of warfare, hunting, and things like that.
Our costume pieces come from a combination of sources. So when we start here, CDC, which is our costume design center, issues us out a full allotment of clothing. So trade shirts, leggings, breech clouts, bags, garters, all sorts of different things that they have as a part of their inventory. As the American Indian Initiative, we have purchased items ourselves, so our bags, our leg garters, most of the silver that you see us wearing comes from our department. And some of us create our own clothes. So our leggings, so my leggings, my breech clout, my moccasins, those were all sewn by me. So I purchased the wool, I picked the silk ribbon, the glass beads, and the leather for the moccasins was from here, but everything else is stuff that I purchased to actually put those together. So for us, it's a combination. CDC gives us all the stuff we need, but some of us do prefer to sit and sew our own stuff, whether that's shirts or do some of our own weaving for Heddle woven stuff and things like that. So it is a combination of things that is produced by us over at our Costume Design Center, and then also either acquired by the American Indian Initiative itself or produced by myself and the other staff members here for our kind of own enjoyment.
The match coat that I'm wearing seems to be a very important type of clothing that a lot of people are carrying with them in the 18th century for multiple uses. So this can serve as a blanket, something to sit on, but it's also an article of clothing that folks are wearing when going to important functions to that extent. And so it was usually said for Cherokee folks, for instance, that even in the dead of summer, they wouldn't be caught dead without a match coat, right? Bags, the type that I have right here is a Heddle woven style of bag. And this is a type of artwork that is introduced with European arrival as well as the materials, right? So with the wool yarn and the glass beads, but this is something that becomes very popular with a lot of southeastern tribes. So when we think about what you could identify coming from certain areas of the Americas, things like Heddle weaving and like this, you can kind of point to being indicative of the southeastern United States. Mm-hmm.
The bag I'm wearing is a little different than the one you saw Cody wearing. I do have a Heddle woven bag like what Cody had, but I've also got a finger woven bag here. Finger weaving is part of our original textile production. And so once Europeans get here, we stop producing the textiles themselves, whether it's dogbane, stinging nettle, milkweed. We begin using European wools because they come ready-made and pre-dyed. So it's taking that tradition of textile production, using new materials, and that's really all that's left of our textile production. That, and then garters and straps. Everything else has been replaced by ready-made wool and linen and silk.
These armbands are made out of silver. And prior to them being made out of silver, they would be made out of various other items like woven materials, plant materials, copper, and things like that. So these items, we actually wore these prior to the English being here, but upon having the access to silver, it is a type of material that we prefer. The gorget is a very particular item to the native culture. So some were made out of bone, stone, shells, and things like that, attached with leather. And actually, it is probably my favorite piece due to the fact that something very similar is happening in English society. When they were knights, they had a big suit of metal armor, and with the introduction of guns, that armor was no longer needed, but they still needed a way to represent their knighthood. So they kept the neck piece which turned into this gorget here. And that protected the neck. And this becomes more of a status symbol for the English. So it's a very particular item that both cultures are having at the exact same time in two parts of the world.
So my favorite piece of costume is my moccasins. They are gaudy, to say the least, and I absolutely love them. I adore just how flashy they are and how different they are from really anyone else's shoes here in the city. You know, you're not going to mistake my feet for anybody else's as you're walking around town. Getting into costume is I think, getting into character. Even though we don't play specific people, all of our programming is in third person, I think our clothing really helps to spark conversation. There is no one else in Williamsburg that is dressing like us. And so when folks see us, whether we're out on the street, whether we're at the palace or at our stage shows or at our encampment, our clothing draws people in because they have no context for it. And so they want an answer. Why do we have no pants? Or why are we dressed half in what is perceived as native fashion, half as in European? So it is really a good, solid spark for conversation with our visitors and guests.
Getting into costume makes me feel very unique every day. We have a lot of items that we have to choose from in our allotment. So we can change the way that we look every single day because we do have visitors that visit here regularly, more than just the one day. They come and visit several days in succession. So when they come see us in multiple days, they can see us in various different outfits, with a hat, without a hat, different silver items, different types of shoes and moccasins.
It makes me feel very confident when I get into these clothes. So when you're talking about getting into clothes like this to interpret a lot of the people of the past, it kind of gets you in that mood and that character to talk about the histories that are going on. And so I assume for many of the folks in the historical period, they're wearing their best when they come to places like Williamsburg. And so I kind of feel like I'm dressed as best as I can be for the job.